All right. Welcome to the Healthy Dialogue podcast number 7. Today I figured we'd go over toxicity in games. My creativity's been kind of at an all-time low since starting my internship 2 weeks ago. It's been pretty draining for the most part. It's demanding. It's been a while since I've been in like a full-time, well, yeah, in like a full-time job setting. The last time I was in it, I was at like my coding boot camp, which was generally less stressful than this internship, but we're moving forward. We're moving forward. At some point in time, I was actually a little worried that I forgot how to hustle, but I think it's just a skill that I haven't practiced in a while. So that's kind of how my internship's been going. For a little bit, I was waking up at like 12 in the afternoon, going to bed at around like 4 in the morning, and that was kind of my schedule through most of school, which was, I guess, for the last year and a half. So it's been a rude awakening trying to literally to get back into a normal work life schedule. So I'm waking up every day at around like between like 6:30 and 8 because I have like my first meeting of the day at 8:30. We do like daily stand-ups and whatnot. So I get to hear everyone on the team and what they're doing, and it's pretty nice. But yeah, like I have to get myself ready before that. So the start of my day is usually 8:30, but there's been a couple cases where I've had to wake up earlier because there's like last minute planning that I get invited to, and sometimes I'm not even awake when they send me those emails. Like for example, this week I had to get up. Well, I did get up at I think like 7:15 in the morning, and I kind of like rested for a little bit because I had a huge workout day the day before. And I wake up at 7:45, and all of a sudden I hear that that I was invited to a pretty important meeting for the week. Um, and it started at 7:30, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" So, ah, people still forget to invite me to some important stuff, and sometimes it's very last minute when they realize that. But I can't help but feel super stressed out about it because it's like I missed the first part of the meeting, and then the rest of it was kind of like a friendly get together, and I was like brought out of my morning routine by the time I got there, so I was kind of I was kind of pissed off. And so yeah, like after the fun stuff, okay, so there was like important stuff to that meeting, and then there was kind of like a fun get to know each other kind of event after that. And the second that started, I kind of dipped because I mean it was true that I needed to do some things around the house that, like, I have responsibilities because my my family was out at the time, so I had to take care of the cats, and I had to make sure that I did the things that I needed to do for myself, like shower and brush my teeth. So I was missing out on all of that when I had the rude awakening that I needed to be at a meeting. So yeah, internship is hard, man. It really is. Anyways, there's a couple other things that I needed to do before we actually start on the topic today. So in terms of what I've said before about trying to expand to multiple platforms with this podcast, I don't think I necessarily have the energy to be able to do that currently, specifically with my internship and whatnot. There's a chance that the other speakers might look into that and start developing like I don't know, like a plan or just give us like some idea of how to actually upload this to multiple platforms, but it is what it is. I think I'm in charge of most of the outreach with this podcast so far, so um, I'm the only one who's who's really invested, and that's okay. One day I might just have like a spur of energy that'll make me look into different technologies to allow me to upload to multiple podcasts. Otherwise, I could just download all the YouTube videos and just extract the audio using some software and upload that somewhere else. I mean, if worse comes to worse, I can just record the video as it's playing and specifically extract the audio from that. Such a terrible idea. Hopefully there's some like conversion to it or like some extracting process along with that. But yeah, I currently just don't have the energy for that. Speaking of energy, that also goes for like the suicide depression story that I had. I I was actually really good about that, like the first and second week of my internship. And then it got like about halfway through and I just kind of lost focus of it. That's not to say that it's still not a goal of mine. It's still a goal. I just haven't had the time well, I haven't had the energy. I've had the time. I just needed to allocate my energy towards something else with stress relieving instead of focusing on getting that story together. I've also thought about like not having a script at all. So I actually uploaded something, and there's going to be a new playlist that's separate from the podcast material, and it's called Spencer's Segments. And I figure I'll just have most of my personal stuff on there. There's like three videos that I really want to upload there, and I think those three uploads will be three specific topics that I'll continue making content for, depending on like the kind of feedback. Maybe like the suicide and depression story will probably be the only one of its kind. But I do want to talk about anime a little bit in like my own segment, because I would say like my anime tastes are substantially different from the two other speakers who talk about anime. And that's not to say that we can't have like an actual like group podcast segment on that. I think we could totally do that. I just think I'll have more things to say about the ones that I've watched, because I've watched a few of them, but we'll talk about that later. Anyways, so toxicity in games. So I'll go over a little background about like what my experience was like with that, and then I have a generated list like I always do when it comes to these podcasts. So I would say I started gaming when I was around like 6 or so, and for the most part it wasn't like anything competitive. So like when you're 6 years old, what are you gonna do? You're gonna play like Nintendo 64 Smash Bros. Smash Bros 64, and then where you're gonna get like all hyped against other players when you're 6 years old. You're like, hey, I beat you. I mean, yeah, like that happens, but at least you're in the same room when you do that. I think there's a huge, substantial difference in like the generation of online gaming. So between 6 years old and 15 years old, I was pretty alone in terms of who I played against, because it was all local, right? Even though the online gaming kind of started, I would say in like 2010 or like somewhere before that, a little bit before that. I guess really before that, now that I think about it, because like every game also had multiplayer online. Like for a while I used to play no, it's not Supreme. Well, yes, I did play Supreme Commander, but I just didn't play it online. I had like a couple friends that played with me in that game though, and we would play like online scrims with other players. He was he was very competitive and pretty aggressive with his use of words. So yeah, he was definitely a more hateful person than I was. But it's so bad because I can't even remember his name, and it's not like we got to know each other very personally either. It's just one of those like virtually no other people, virtual companionship. It is what it is. What was I playing? Oh my gosh, this is gonna bug me. There's like a Star Wars Commando like game where it's like Delta Squad is what it's called, or is the squad name. You're just like elites for You're just elites for like the Republic for in the Star Wars galaxy, so in the Star Wars universe. Anyways, we used to play like a bunch of multiplayer stuff like that, or I used to play a bunch of multiplayer stuff like that. Words would get bleeped out, so normally I wouldn't know what they meant. I feel like chat in there wasn't that great. Like, if you really wanted to be, was there even a chat? I can't even remember. I think people just joined the game and then they played. Like, I don't think there was any chat functionality. And that's for the better, anyways. I'm pretty sure people would be super pissed. But you took all your anger out in how you played. And that's the way how I like to do it. Like, if I ever get like passionate, then I start gaming. And so you would get like a lot of people who would just be pretty competitive in how they played the game. And it was all fun. It was all fun. That game kind of died down for a little bit. Then I started playing COD when I was like 14, 15, no, probably like 13, 14, no, 14, 15. Yeah, 14, 15 is right. Started playing COD with a bunch of with a bunch of middle school, high school friends. Those were the days. You get like a bunch of people who would just scream a bunch of racial slurs and just slurs in general. It's the whole range of anything that you can imagine of. Like, some people were pretty creative with how they went about like being offensive, and I don't feel like anyone really knew what they were talking about. Like, people just threw out these insensitive terms, and that was just the dynamic of online gaming on Xbox. It is what it is, though. I mean, it's all wrong, but it's hard to imagine that they were actually using that in the derogatory way that those terms are usually meant in. I think they usually did it just to be insensitive, because that's what they had no other basis for how to be insensitive. So once one person was like getting all into it, I feel like everyone else just caught on and did the same. No one really had any thought as to what most of those terms meant. And if they did, then they were they were the real ones that you needed to look out for. Or, well, not so much, because nobody took them seriously if they didn't understand the slurs that they were throwing out. But it is what it is. Usually well, I don't remember back in like the COD days, like girls being very present in some of the games. Maybe there was no one who actually stood out. No instance stood out in that specific case. Yeah, I can't remember. Anyways, so come like after the COD days, I started playing a bunch of like League of Legends. And oh my god, I started out like season 2, season 3, or maybe I played season 1. I can't even remember. I know I played ranked season 2, and I got silver. So, naturally everyone has to start somewhere, right? Season 3, season 4, I got myself to plat. I was pretty close to diamond. And then I think I just went on a large losing spree and just couldn't look at ranked again. So I was very weak-minded when it came to like rank and whatnot, so it is what it is. But the toxicity in there is outrageous. You get people rage quitting, you get people griefing. It's just League was a mess. And you know what? I don't feel bad saying that it probably still is a mess. Nobody's been able to figure out how to get that shit together. And it's discouraging for players like me who give up easily on a system if it's not. If you give me like some reasons to give up on it, other people may like sit through it, but for me, I don't sit through a lot of bullshit. And so I think I'm one of the people who will easily give up on a game if there's no reason for me to continue with it, or if I feel like it's not worth my time. And I mean, that goes for everyone, right? It's like the second you start disagreeing with the conditions of an institution that puts these rules on you, is the second that you don't think it's like worth your time. So anyways, I started playing CS:GO probably around like 18, 19. So like when I first got to college, I needed a FPS to start looking at. Um, and I started playing CS:GO, and I would play that like I wouldn't even know. I couldn't even tell you. I probably even played till like 4 in the morning most nights, even though I would have class at like 9. I would really ruin myself over playing games. But I would play CS:GO, and I would say I got pretty far. There was like a so in terms of like the distribution of how ranks went, there was like a lot of people at Silver 1, which is like the lowest rank. And then you had a lot of people at Global Elite, which was at the highest rank. So there was like this huge dip at the middle. It's like it was more rare to see people like in the middle of the spectrum than it was at the ends of it. And that's just like a wrong way of doing a rank system in general. And so even with all that said, I did place at the middle. So I was like the minority, even though I should have been at the majority of where people placed at. So a lot of people were at Global Elite. And then they did the huge distribution, like correction, which was now all of a sudden I was a part of the majority of people, and the ends had like no one at it. So even after that correction, I placed, I think, within the top 10% of players who played competitively for CS:GO. So along the way, there was a bunch of people who would get pissed off at like really random shit. And you would just get disagreements all the time about how people play, the play styles of, well, yeah, the play styles of how your teammates played, the play styles of how the enemy played. It was a tactical shooter that frustrated a lot of people because there's a team element, there's an enemy element, there's Smurfs in the game too. So, and that's another thing with League of Legends. It's like you could never really know your true rank if there's Smurfs in the game. Like it's just so like yeah, you can grind out as much as you can to get the most accurate representation of what your rank actually could be or what your to reach your potential rank. But it's like why do that? You're asking yourself to play upper bound of like thousands of hours just to get the rank that you think you deserve. And for what? For what? You know, I'm okay. Like, I put in the time back when I was 18, 19. Back when I was like 16, 17, 18, 19. You know, I played competitive games all the time. And I got myself to really great achievements or to great milestones in terms of how I placed among other competitive players. So, for the most part, I'm at around like the top 10%. And that's a global statistic, I will say. Like across every type of game that I played competitively that I actually tried at, it's top 10%. And I have an upper bound of being number 1 for the region in Brawlhalla, which is what my friend and I were for I don't even know how long, but for some period of time, we were the number 1 spot for Brawlhalla in the NA West. And a lot of people who are from the Brawlhalla community would say, well, you know, most of the competitive players in the competitive like skill gap is much higher at the East region or the US East region. And that is true. That's very true. But you know, being on the West Coast, we agreed, both my teammate and I agreed to the conditions of 2v2s in US West because we had a better connection to that. And we thought the competitive playing field was more fair to us. So then like connecting to US East servers, which gave us like a 30 ping disadvantage in comparison to NA West. It was probably even more than that. Like I'm guessing Like, I was thinking that NA East was probably around like 70 ping. I'm kind of thinking, based on the location, it was probably around like 90 or 100. Whereas like NA West, I think it was like around 20 or 30. So, yeah, you got to choose the playing field that you want to be on. And the second you start regarding it as not worth your time is when you start to is when you start to quit. But yeah, unfortunately, our competitive range only spanned to the western region of the United States, or of North America, more important, or more accurately. So, yeah, I know what it's like to be a part of like the competitive scene. Even though I place globally within the top 10%, there's other places where I placed higher than that, like H1Z1, for example. So back when it was like at its most popular, I was top 1% of every player in North America. So I'd like to think I know what I've seen enough toxicity in video games at the competitive level to know that toxicity in games is a real problem. I will admit something though. I think it's getting better. In terms of where it was like 4 or 5 years ago, it was really bad. The reason why you had people giving up on League of Legends and people giving up on CSGO is because of the toxicity level. I even played Overwatch for a little bit, not competitively. Like, I played it for fun because it is a fun game. But you would still get a lot of people who, I mean, you watch one of Donkey's videos on Overwatch and it's just, wow. You get a lot of people who are just so hard set on trying to get the optimal winning strategy and have everyone else participate around it, even when you're willing to fill a spot that nobody else will have a say against. And you won't give anyone else a say against the position that you chose. So you get like a lot of offensive characters in Overwatch who people will like gravitate to because they want to play like attacking characters. And so, yeah, I don't know. There's like it's such a hard thing to describe, like why people are so toxic in games like that. But I think it comes down to these people linearly see their success, or they see their success coming from a linear path and don't understand that the path actually isn't linear. So in terms of like progression, you would ideally want to see yourself just going forward to get to the goal where you want to get to reach your potential. But the hard realization is that you actually have to backtrack multiple times, and then you move forward multiple times, and then you backtrack multiple times. And there's all these different variables that contribute to why you're moving backwards or forwards. There's your team, there's the enemy team, there's Smurfs, there's people on your team who are just boosted. It's like, and like legitimately boosted, not just, they're having a bad game. There's an actual service out there for people to boost their account to a certain level, or to a certain rank, so they can just have the rank. And it is what it is, man. Like, you can't, I don't think you can really ban a service like that. It's like, the market is telling the world that this is needed, that was a needed service. And so, the market answered, and a lot of people are benefiting financially from providing that service. So, there's a whole range of reasons why it's all that crap. Like, I'm going to be honest, I'm one of those people who griefs the second, like, I don't think anybody else on my team is worth, well, it's not that anyone else in the team, but like if one person really fucks up and says something like insensitive or can't really see the bigger picture as to like why we're losing, or perhaps something that I did that I I don't know, maybe I did something stupid, or maybe someone else on my team did something stupid, but they're really being toxic about it, I will grief the shit out of them. And I know my friend is is the exact way about that, because fuck those people, man. If you're toxic like that, you better expect some retaliation, and in a way where you don't win, because I will win in that situation. I have all the control, knowing that you are pissed off to hell, with fumes coming out of your ears and the top of your head's blown off and fuming. The fact that you allow to express so much emotion just off of like something so trivial to me essentially means that I know how to control you. So, I mean, normally I wouldn't give that piece of advice out to many people, but I figure if you're here, you might as well hear my perspective on that. Anyhow, toxicity exists. I think it's getting better. I think there's hope that it's not that it's clearing out. It'll still be a problem always, but I think people are more willing to stand up. And I think that's a generational thing too. I think a lot of people who were like competitive players 5-10 years ago are now mature enough to stand up against people who are toxic. So there's some hope for that. Anyhow, that's my history with it. Let's actually go over some of the things on the markdown file that I provided. So there's different kinds of games, and you're gonna see like different types of toxicity in that too. And I'll give some background as to where I've seen this happen and what kind of toxicity that you would see here. So the first kind of game would be like PvE. So just like AI, you're playing against AI and whatnot. And like co-op mode. So there's a couple instances where I've seen toxicity here. So in League of Legends, you get like a bunch of, I mean, I'm going to say shallow people, because as much as I want to say like teenagers play like League of Legends, which is probably true, and probably the instances where I've seen toxicity is specifically those kinds of people, but shallow people in general who play like League of Legends. And I play like co-op mode all the time, just like really dumb co-op mode, want to play Senna for a game, and just beat the shit out of bots because I just want something to pass my time. You get people who like call certain positions and they get really pissed off that their positions are taken, and it's like, this is just a bot game, man. Why are you getting so pissed? I don't understand, man. It's like, what do you want out of your bot game that I don't? I just want to beat up some bots. Like, I don't care if you farm like all the minions. I don't care if you farm the entire jungle and the enemy teams, the AI enemy team's jungle. I don't care if you give me no resources whatsoever. I just want to play the game. And some of these other people just have different ideas of what they want to see out of a bot game. So, and if you get like actual bots on your team, which they have software for, if you want to just level your account passively, you can just run a bot or run a executable, and it'll just play the game for you. And that ruins the experience for everyone else on the team, which is like, fuck. But it is what it is. And you just report that account like afterwards. It's not a big deal. It's pretty obvious when you can tell when they're bots, though. And I can't believe Riot hasn't figured out how to passively, or how to like find that kind of software. That pisses me off. Anyways, maybe it's getting better. I know that was a problem a while ago. It probably still is. Whatever. There's another game that I played that was also co-op, and it's called Wildlands. It's Tom Clancy's Wildlands, and that one's a really great game. And you have to play with a bunch of other people. Or it's not that you have to, but there's a co-op setting where you can play on an open server, and just do the PvE portions, and it's pretty nice. It's one of my favorite games because it's open world and it also has like that tactical element to it. There's like visuals that go along or to help you with coordinating attacks properly with your team. And so sometimes you get like some griefers in there, and it sucks for everyone. But then you just find a new lobby. Sometimes you get people who are just like super, super aggressive about it. Like some people understand that not everyone has this sort of capacity in order to keep up in certain games. And then there's other people who don't understand that not everyone's as talented of a gamer as they are. And then they just start spewing. Well, it's not even that they're talented to begin with, but you get the idea. And then some of these people just go off, like in chat. It's like, bro, why didn't you do this? Yo, fuck you. Like, why? Get all up in arms about like something so trivial in a video game. And this is just like the PvE co-op kind of game too. It's like, damn. Damn. Anyways, the idea for that is I don't even know why people would do that. For these kinds of games, like co-op and PvE. It's like you're not risking, especially with those games, it's not like you're risking anything. Like maybe your time is what you value the most, and that's why you're like upset and toxic about that sort of thing. But for the most part, I can't understand why else you'd be so pissed at someone for in like a cooperative environment. When there's like no risk at all in terms of like your virtual status. So, anyways, we'll move on to like team v team games. So this is like referencing just like any team game, really. And this doesn't even have to be exclusive to like video games either, because you have like IRL games too. So or like general sports games. I used to play soccer back in the day, and my God, some people in soccer were very toxic. I mean, I'm one of those people. Like, if you ever caught me on my bad side when I was playing soccer, I'd probably knock you over. Or I'd probably try to slide tackle you at every point that I could. Like, I was such a resentful piece of shit when I played sports. Specifically soccer, though. Like, the other two sports that I played, for the most part, I wasn't toxic. So I used to play badminton, and I used to swim as well. And those are just like you against yourself. Well, not so much badminton, but like swimming, for example, was more you against yourself and your past self. Because you would get like a time in a certain event, and it was your job at the competition to beat your past time. So it was like as described already, a you against your past self kind of sport. And that was great. Badminton was like, I want to say the people who played badminton were just generally better. Like they weren't like super, they didn't have like huge egos. I mean, maybe they did, but it's not like they showed it off in the sense that was toxic. Like soccer was like the only game where I was just so pissed off at people who had like huge egos, because they would like showcase their ego in grand ways. Like some people actually like did like something beneficial for their own like gameplay, which was like they would spend a lot of time doing like special moves or work on their movement or their control with the soccer ball. They would outlet it in their craft. And then there were other people who were just like super vocal about that shit, and I was just like, oh, the people who were vocal about it just like ran their mouths, and so I felt it was like an obligation to just run them over sometimes. Like there's been people who would, I mean, like it is a physical sport, so if people got physical with me, you better expect me to like push you down to the ground, especially because I'm short too, right? So you get like all these tall people, and sometimes they're too big for me to run over, but if given the chance, I will try to like knock you down if possible. And that's a bad thing. That's coming from a toxic place when the whole goal of the game is to shoot the ball into a net. So, yeah, there's certain games that, well, from a team-based element, it gets you that gets you toxic. But team v team, for the most part, I would say there's plenty of things to be toxic about when you're a player. You can either be mad at your team, you can be mad at the other team, you could be mad at yourself. And all those factors contribute to your mentality when you're playing the game. I think that's all I wanted to say with that. And then you have like 1v1 games. So when I think of 1v1, I think of like card games. I don't know if there's necessarily too many games that are like 1v1. There's a couple like 1v1 competitive modes that I think people enjoy, but I'm not a huge fan of playing 1v1s. So going back to like the Brawlhalla career that I had, not so much a career because I didn't actually get paid, but I was close to getting paid, but no. But no. There's more elements in team games that I personally enjoy, but there's also like 1v1 moments that people have. And I wouldn't say people get necessarily pissed off. I mean, people do get pissed off in 1v1s, but it's less visible. It's more in the craft than it is in the... no, that's not even true. So when I think back on like Brawlhalla, I see a bunch of people who chat to their opponent and say like, yo, you're dog shit. And it's like, I don't know, trash talking, just trash talking everywhere. It's all the same. Anyways. But when you're in a 1v1 setting, the only person you can really get mad... Well, okay, there's two parties that you can get mad at, and that's either yourself or the other player. So instead of having like you can be mad at your team element that you would in your team v team, this is very condensed to more of like a binary system. Well, it's not binary if you can't be mad at all, but yeah, there's three options of you're not mad, you're mad at yourself, or you're mad at the other player. All right, moving on to Battle Royale. So I played my fair share of Fortnite. I played a fair share of PUBG. I have not played Warzone. I played Apex and I played H1Z1. So with all of them, the only way... Okay, most of these are team games, or like team battle royales. So like Fortnite has potential to be 1v1 or team. PUBG has potential to be 1v1 or team. Is Warzone team? Well, okay, I know Warzone is a team, but is it 1v1s? I can't remember. Apex is supposed to be team. Either that or you're a 1v team. And then H1Z1 is both team and solo. And there's like added factors here because there's like bullshit within Battle Royale as well. So there's like a luck factor that comes to this kind of game in comparison to like the other ones, which are mostly controlled. So the luck factor is usually you have to pick up weapons in order to gear yourself out. And sometimes the gear that you end up landing on isn't the best one for the conditions of the fight that you're going into. And so that's the kind of luck factor that I'm referencing here. I think people get pissed off, but it also benefits you if the other player that you're up against has the worst luck of the two of you. So there's that factor when it comes to just like the PvP portion. Then there's also like there's the added element of, usually there's a zone when it comes to battle royale, and depending on where you are on the map, you have to locate to a specific position, or you don't have to locate at all. Sometimes the positioning of that zone is to your benefit, or in most cases it's not. So there's also that added luck factor. So there's just like more. It's not a test of who can play the game better, or who can play the game better on fair grounds. It's a game of who is the luckiest on the unfair grounds is what battle royales are. But for the most part, like everything that we talked about with Team v Team and 1v1 is basically the same. It's just, instead of fair grounds play, it's now unfair grounds play. And I think a lot of people like that because it benefits them like sometimes. And then other times it doesn't. So they at least see some success against like a massive pool of players who are in their lobby. And then other times it's just they die like straight off the bat. So that's Battle Royale. Then you have FPS, which would be inclusive of like COD, multiplayer, Halo, multiplayer, Gears of War. I didn't play too much of Gears of War. And then like Destiny, like PvP. So with like these FPS, these are mostly team games. I don't think most of them are 1v1. I think they have 1v1 like exclusive modes, but I think for the most part they're team v team. Now I would say like everything that we talked about with team v team is pretty much the same. Though some people do the incredible though and do like a 1v team kind of situation. Like some people go in there with the mentality that they're against the entire like opposing team. And sometimes it works out for them. Like my friend is super talented at COD. Oh my god. Like he's known for massive kill streaks, MOABs, and it's just, I don't know. He's so talented. But yeah, I would say like first person shooters are mostly team games, and you see pretty much the same kinds of team v team toxicity that you would everywhere else. Yeah. So moving on to like MOBAs, which would be inclusive of like League of Legends and then Dota. Those are exclusively team v teams. There's no 1v1s. I mean, you can have like a 1v1 custom match, but like that doesn't appeal to everyone, and that's not a part of the like normal map pool or normal mode pool. I would say like the team v team aspect is still there. Like there's a like an added element of PvE because there's portions of the game that you need to control and manipulate to give your team an advantage, because it's not specifically PvP all the time. There's like added elements of PvE in there as well. So like with League of Legends, you have to farm in order to gain gold, which gold gives you some advantage in terms of like buying items against your opponents. Then you can also fight your opponents and get like a kill, and that gives you gold as well. So there's like, it's a mix of PvE and PvP. And that's why I think MOBAs are pretty popular, because there's more things to manage in terms of the competitive game that it is. All right. So moving on to tactical shooters. This is kind of the same of FPS. I just think there's these ones are different because they're slower. And I think there's more time consumption with these. So when I think of tactical shooters, I think of like CSGO, Valorant, and Rainbow Six Siege. There's like some elements to I think it's just slowed down. And it's not as fast paced as like some of the other ones here. And it's less forgiving on you if you mess up. And so where I think people get pretty upset with tactical shooters is that like there's a lot of team elements to this as well. So you need to be able to hold certain positions in order to like keep objectives clear. You need to be able to hold positions just so, you know, your team can react, because it's not just that you need to be able to react to the opposing team and trade off where you need to. You need to do as much as you can during your lifespan, because anyone of their team could probably kill you at any point in time. But you need to be strong enough to be able to trade off as much as you can for your team, so that they have the best odds of winning the remainder of that fight for your team. And so there's like, you can be mad at the other team, you can be mad at yourself, or you could be mad at your team for not doing the job that they need to. Yeah, you know what, I'll just keep it at that. So I didn't really address this before going into the kinds of games section, but for each one of those, I was supposed to explain why do players get mad, who do players get mad at, how do players get mad, and how do companies address this problem. So I think the only thing that I really want to talk about here is how do companies address this problem. So there's a couple competitive games out there that have like chat functionality as well as voice chat functionality. And what you're able to do is you're as a player on the team, you're able to mute the other player. Or I guess it doesn't matter. I think you're able to do that with like 1v1 kinds of games too. Like you're able to mute the other team. Or mute your opponents as well as like mute your team too. So with like Battle Royale, I play Apex Legends a lot. And for the most part, I just mute everyone. And like, I'm sorry, but it's a feature of the game that I need to use, because too often people abuse their power to have a voice in my gaming experience to where it ruined it for me. So, you know, you get like a bunch of people who are super toxic when things don't go the way of the team, and say something like really shallow or like you suck, like at the end of the game, or at the, when our team is dead. So, enough of that has happened for me to be like, well, I'm not going to give anyone else a chance to spout shit. So, I might as well mute everyone. I mean, I honestly think games should just have a perma mute button. Like, I don't care about your ability to play games, like, and having that open chat system. It's like, I don't give a shit, like, if I'm hurting other people along the way for muting everyone. It's like, if the game can't promise me that no toxicity will come my way, then I will reconsider that approach. But for the time being, it's like too many people have benefited from being able to just spew shit on voice logs or on voice comms or just general chat. So, I have less tolerance for that than a lot of other people. Sorry. And I don't even need to apologize there. I think the company should be apologizing on that behalf. It's like, you should introduce a perma mute button. I don't know what else to say. Just mute everyone on the team. The one thing that I don't even want is to have the names of my teammates on my screen either. Just keep everything anonymous and just let me play. I don't care about making connections here. I just want to play the game. Very similar to what I was doing with the Star Wars Commando game, or back when I talked about that at the beginning. It's everything was essential. It wasn't anonymous, but people had no opportunity to spout shit. So that's what made the game fun, and that's where you could, actually focus on playing the game instead of having these other people like spew shit in your ear. So there's the functionality to mute people, but I think there should be the functionality to like full mute everyone and have everything anonymous. Like I don't want to give anyone power ever. So, just let me do my thing and play the game in the way that I want to play it. There's also like bans on so if people like get through the cracks, right? Because a lot of companies actually want you to communicate with other people. It is what it is, but yeah, a lot of people will, or like a lot of companies want you to actually have some form of communication. What I really like about Apex is that there's a pinging system. So, and they do it very well. It's like there's multiple things that you can ping to indicate different types of information. And it's very easy. You can do it within the span of like a quarter of a second or a half a second. And that's even faster. That's more optimal than pressing down on your voice command and then actually saying it. Like it's easier for you to ping something than it is to say it or type it. That's how you know you did like a communication system right. So, but yeah, there's like bans for voice chat as well as like normal chat too, and that's pretty standard across like multiple games. But and then there's just like overall bans in general. So if you grief enough or you like leave matches too often, your account gets banned from playing games, which you get what's coming to you at that point. And I would say most of them do it pretty well, or they implement those systems pretty fairly. Okay. Okay, let's get to solutions then. So, I guess I guess I've already talked about like what my thoughts are on having a perma mute and having like everything perma anonymous. I honestly think that's the best way. Just have an option for that. People will opt in for it and other people won't. Some people want to play the game to make connections with like random people over the internet. I'm not one of those people. Just have everyone anonymous to me and I'll be a happy player. That's all I'm going to say. Like so many people want like streamer modes and whatnot for these games. I want streamer mode just so I don't have to have any correlation with anyone ever. and just make sure that like nobody goes after me because of like who I am or something that I did to them the last game or whatnot. I don't want toxicity ever, and I don't want to like have connections with people for people to abuse that connection system to get to me. So I've already talked about that, but one of the points that I've made in this section is it a company's job to moderate the chat that happens on their platforms? I would think so. Because so from a legal standpoint, obviously, because it's like if you have people spewing out shit all the time, you need to be able to moderate moderate their speech if they start like throwing out threats. This isn't a free speech system. In the same way that like America doesn't think everything is free speech. Like there's some moderation to like the things you can say, and it's the company's job to moderate the platform of where they say that sort of stuff. Like you need to be able to hold up the line to make sure nobody crosses the bound of what's legal and what's not. So yes, it's their job. How much of that is their job though? So from the legal standpoint, yeah, you want to hold up that barrier at the edge, but do they need to cut it like even shorter than the edge? And I guess that depends on the company and where their morals lie on that. Because some of them may want to address like toxicity like more strongly than other companies do. Like CS:GO, for example, nobody gave a shit if you said something in the chat. Nobody gave a shit if you said something in voice comms. It's like you could report people all you want. Nobody got banned. Like I'm gonna tell you right now, like that was like the most unrewarding report system you could ever have. Like there was cheating involved sometimes, and you were able to moderate. Like they took cheating to some degree, like more seriously than they did like toxicity. But my God, nobody cared that toxicity was a thing in video games, unless if someone important made it important for them. So I don't know. Just like the other day, I was watching. Like someone posted, one of the OTV crew had like posted something about how a guy was like bashing on women and being misogynistic, and she called out to Riot publicly on Twitter and used her platform to be like, can you ban this guy? And you know Riot took the appropriate measures to ban the guy afterwards. And it's like there's so many other cases of that happening. But just because like one important person made it important means that they're the ones that, I mean, I don't know. I just think that it shouldn't be up to the person, to the victim, in order to report that sort of thing. Like you should always be active as the company to be looking out for that kind of behavior. And you stand up for what's right, not the victim standing up for what's right. But yeah, it's based on the company. That's just my thoughts of how, like if I were to create a game company like and have like an open service like that, or like one of these games, then yeah, I I would do my best to make sure that I moderate like how people behave to other people. Like I give my threshold for bullshit and like toxicity is so low that I'm just willing to ban you on the spot. And maybe that sets me up for having a failed game, but hey, you know what? At least I can take pride in knowing that toxicity is something that I take seriously, and probably more seriously than a lot of other games do. What's a good way to address toxicity? So I think most companies do what they can. They have like ban systems in place. They also have like both like account bans as well as voice comms and general chat bans. So I don't know what else you're gonna do. I mean, you could be more strict on those rules, but or have like a less priority queue going on where you just put all the toxic people together, so that you still at least give them some gaming experience, or you still at least provide them the gaming experience still, but it's with other people who have ruined the gaming experience for the others. So I think some games actually do that too. Now that I think about it. But anyways, I think the current systems in place are good now. The next point is, if their business is doing fine, is there a problem? And you know what? Like, I can't even say this for sure. I know when I created this document, I had some thought with that prompt that some companies just don't give a shit about toxicity. And to this day, I still do. Like, CSGO doesn't give a shit. Like, I can tell you with confidence, and you can't even change my mind. Even if a CSGO or like someone at Valve or whoever's running the game now wants to tell me in person that, oh yeah, this is how we deal with toxicity. It's like, no, you don't. It's like, come on, man. You can't tell me anything back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago, anybody did anything towards toxicity. And it's the same thing with League of Legends. It's like your threshold is so low for what you consider toxic or like unbearably toxic towards your player base that you won't do anything about it. It's like, I got away with a lot of shit. And that's not to say that I should have been banned. I mean, maybe I should have been. By my standards, yeah, I should have been banned. But it's like, there were people who were substantially worse than I was. Maybe like tenfold of what I did. And they never got banned. And it's like, you know, why would you ban these people? Or like, why wouldn't you ban these people? And when you think about it from a business perspective, it's like, why would you ban these people? I mean, they're still they're still players of your game. You know, there's still a statistic for you. Like you're using your service, and the odds that they're gonna ruin the service for other people or ruin the user base ruin your general population user base is very low because they'll still continue playing the game afterwards anyways. And it's like, from a business perspective, you can see that. It's like, if the business is doing fine, regardless if the toxic player base is still in it, then, you know, maybe it's worthwhile to just have them still in instead of, you know, ban hammering like a large majority, or not a large majority, but like a minority of your population. You know? So, it is what it is. And like I said, I'm no fan of how a lot of like these companies do this. Or how a lot, well, I mean, I'm no fan in the sense of the threshold that they uphold in terms of when they ban people and when they don't ban people. I think it should be much stricter because that's just me. From a business perspective, it doesn't even make sense to ban people in general unless if they're like an extreme case and they're getting popularity over something that they did. And maybe that's why like the OTV person had to speak up in order to get that person banned, because it's like, you know, that person in particular is going to generate a lot of hate towards the game. And so, you know, since it was brought to the public, everyone else, like, you need to follow suit and make the ban happen in order to please the people. You know? Like, yes, you can disagree that what he did was I mean, you can agree that the person did something wrong. But if someone else brought that up to Riot, they wouldn't give a shit about it. And I have like, I mean, it's not that they wouldn't give a shit, but it's like they have less reason to give a shit about it if it was from a nobody who proposed that ban, or who wanted that person banned. So, you know, it's all business, it's all marketing, it's all bullshit. But it is what it is. Anyways, I think that's going to conclude like this segment of the podcast, but yeah, my throat's kind of dying right now. Thank you guys for hanging out. I will, well, actually, I guess I also got to say another thing. So the reason why I had this on today instead of on Sunday is because tomorrow for the United States is the 4th of July. So, national holiday. Instead, I had to do it today. So, that's why I should have addressed that at the beginning. I just totally forgot about it. But, yep, it is what it is. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll see you next Sunday. In terms of like the suicide and depression story, I don't know when that'll come out, as I said at the beginning. But hopefully sooner than later, because I do want that out as soon as possible. But I want it complete too. So we'll just see how that turns out. Anyways, thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.